Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita. Hello everyone, this is Rod from the Alchemist, and today we will be talking about one of the major poet, if not the major poet in the Italian history, Dante Alighieri. And we will be talking about Dante because there is really a lot of esotericism, symbolism related to his works, and especially the work of the Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri, really, we're talking about the 1300, and Dante Alighieri really paved the way for the Italian humanism, which actually ended up with the Renaissance. Dante was one of the first to put a lot of symbolism, a lot of occult and esoteric meaning into his work. We will be followed by all the painters of the Renaissance, a lot of in the Botticelli's Primavera, pretty much in Leonardo's painting. So a lot of these occult symbolism will follow Dante's example later on in the years, but Dante for sure is one of the first, and knowingly, especially poetry has been a method to channel occult meaning ever since Homer, and even before. So the work of Dante, the Divina Commedia, basically contains all the ingredients that would then fuel the rediscover of the Hellenic knowledge, and therefore bring up the explosion of the Renaissance. In fact, beside what crosses the eye first in the reading of the Divina Commedia, this is actually an initiatory journey of Dante. This is an initiatory journey inspired by the Greek Roman mystery schools and explained within an alchemical context. Already several points were listed by René Guénon, one of the pioneers to start to dig into the work of Dante Alighieri through a different or a deeper reading key. And the points listed by René Guénon in his work called the Esotericism of Dante actually found a lot of traction in later researches, especially his speculation about Dante being actually initiated into a Knights Templar order. This order was a branch, of course, of the Knights Templar, a branch called the Faithful of Love. And this theory has been pretty much proven in recent days, and we have more and more proof that Dante did belong to this kind of secret society, inspired or somehow related, belonging to the Knights Templars, to the Knight Templars. And Dante symbolism, moreover, which is of course coming from the Templars, we will see it over and over again later in the Rosicrucian symbolism, until later on, as of now, in the modern Masonry. So first of all, what is this poem about? What is the first thing that crosses the eyes? So the poem is essentially Dante finds himself in the mid of his mortal life, so meaning when he's around 35 years old, and find himself lost in, he described it as gloomy woods. Some dangers are in front of him, some dangers that cannot allow him to move forward, but thanks to the help of spiritual guides that will come to rescue and help him, he will be taken through this journey, going through the deepest part of hell, all the way up until the paradise, the latest stage of paradise, to finally be able to see the creator of all, therefore the vision of God. And Dante himself is not even really shy in telling us that there is much more into his verses that what you can actually read as a first sight. In fact, if is very clearly explained it in the canto number 9 of Inferno, in the verses from 61 to 63, he says, O voi che avete gli intelletti sani, mirate la dottrina che s'asconde sotto il velame degli versi strani. And again he emphasized it in one canto of the Purgatory, the canto number 8, from verse 19 to 21. He says, aguzza qui, lettor, ben gli occhi al vero, che il velo ora è ben tanto sottile, certo che il trapassar dentro è leggero. So what is Dante is telling us in these very explicit and very clear verses that we need to, for who has intellecto sano, so we have a sound mind, has to look deeper than what actually sees through these strange verses. And in the Purgatory, again, he tells us to be very careful at this point, because to pass the veil is very easy. So I think Dante couldn't be more explicit in telling us to dig into a more deeper meaning that in his poem. Furthermore, the structure of the poem itself plays with very esoteric symbolism, a symbolism that comes from mystery traditions, especially from the Pythagorean and Neo-Pythagorean tradition. In fact, the division of Inferno, Hell, Purgatorio, and Heaven and Paradise, they're all divided into 9 circles. So in Inferno we have 9 circles of hell, plus 1, the last one where Lucifer is in the center of earth. We have 9 rings in the Purgatory, plus 1, which is the last one, or the top, the Garden of Eden. And finally we have 9 spheres in Paradise, in the Paradiso, with the last one being the Empyrean, or the highest heaven, or the essence of God. So we have a 9, 9, and 9. Moreover, the 3 parts each are of 33 verses. 33 verses that are interlocked in what we call terza rima, or 3 lines rhyme. So you see this repetition and this deep connection with the number 3, number 33, and number 9. So Dante begins his initiatory journey in descending into the depth of Inferno, into the depth of hell. And this is a recurring theme in the mystery schools. I mean, we have seen the descent in hell, or the catabasis, the descent into the chronic, the underworld, from Orpheus. We've seen it in Odysseus through the verses of Homer. We have seen it in Persephone. So it's a recurring theme as an initiatory journey, because the catabasis, the descension into the underworld, the descension into hell, is what will bring the initiate to what is called the death in this form, to then rebirth as an initiate, as an adept, into the new life. So the descension and then following by the ascension is really a metaphor for the death and rebirth of an initiate into the new initiated life. In fact, we can actually compare it to Alchemy, which I think was one of the major points of this poem. in alchemy there is an acronym. The acronym of alchemy is vitriol, which is visita interiora terra rectificando invenies occultum lapidem, or with a rough translation, visit the interior of the earth and you will find, by purifying, the hidden stone. So this is the first phase of alchemy, is the phase of nigredo, related to the element of earth, and is the element related to materiality. When we reach the very bottom of the quote-unquote materiality of the world, which in Dante's comedy is represented by the last ring of Inferno, where Lucifer is the symbol of materiality. From that point onward, we will be able to start, is able to do the ascension back. The ascension back that is equal to the alchemical stage of albedo. Albedo, the purification, linked to the element of water. And finally, when he moves through the purgatory, so is purified, he goes into the stage of rubedo, the last stage, which will bring him, which is linked to the alchemical fire, is the alchemical wedding, and finally the philosopher's stone. So Dante has to go through these three processes of nigredo, albedo, the purification, and the rubedo finally, to reach the philosopher's stone, or to reach and to see the very essence of God. His journey starts, as he mentioned, with the sun in Aries. So we are in the spring of the 1300, and Dante chooses this date, this specific date of Easter, sun in Aries, not only because it's also corresponding to the resurrection of Jesus, so it's a very important milestone for an initiate, a resurrection, as I mentioned before, as a rebirth, but also because sun in Aries, anyway, throughout the ancient times, is considered a period of beginning of something. So in Italian, beginning, we say inizio, which is also the root word for iniziazione or initiation. So his journey starts on sun in Aries, so the spring of 1300, and most likely here we're referring to his initiation. A very important point in of the whole poem is that this journey is made possible by three blessed ladies that Dante identified as the Virgin Mary, that later we will give a deeper interpretation of what he means by the Virgin Mary, Saint Lucy of Syracuse. Saint Lucy of Syracuse is the patron saint of eyesight. The name Lucy, from the Italian Lucia, is the root word of lux, the Latin word for light. So Saint Lucy is the patron of eyesight, but is also a meaning of light, the same light that an initiate would be looking for through a initiatory journey. So Lucy alerts Beatrice. Beatrice is the famous love of the life of Dante. Unfortunately, a love that was never consumed, because beside Dante was arranged and married to another person, but also Beatrice died in her young age. So for Dante, the personification, having put Beatrice as a guide, she will guide him through paradise. Beatrice for Dante in this case is representing the holy wisdom, the holy knowledge. In Gnostic term, we would call Beatrix what is actually the Hagia Sophia. So she is the wisdom that will take him to be able to perceive or better to go through, to elevate himself through the paradise. We will see it later. So we have the intercession of these three ladies, Virgin Mary, Saint Lucia, so the light, and the wisdom. As mentioned, then it will be Beatrice to take care of Dante when he will reach the paradise, the Paradiso. And it's interesting because at that time Dante makes a new word, a new Italian word, which is transumanare. And this is a beautiful, interesting word which almost have no translation. If we attempt a translation, it would be something like transhumanize. So basically overcoming the limits of human nature by getting closer to the divine. And this is actually the final goal of the every esoteric experience, actually, is the transformation of the adept. But first Dante has to go through his catabasis, he has to go through his descension, he has to go through his nigredo stage. So the choice of Virgil, the poet Virgil, as his guide for hell is a very interesting choice because, well, beside Virgil being one of the most famous and most celebrated poets during the Roman time, Virgil is a pagan, so has nothing to do with the Christian religion, although he's again put as a guide, and he's a Neo-Pythagorean. He was very renowned for his divination skills, known to be a magician. In fact, he put a lot of talismans in the city of Naples, where he last lived, especially to prevent the volcano Vesuvius to erupt over the city. So he's known for a lot of talismans, and also his verses were later used as divination as well. It's called sortes virgiliane, so using like a bibliomancy, using Virgil verses for divination. The same thing that happened with Homer, in which we still find some fragment of Homer in the Greek-Egyptian magical papyri. Anyhow, his journey through Inferno begins until going through all the 9 circles and all the 9 levels of sinners, and finally he reaches the center of earth where Lucifer is. And as we mentioned, Lucifer in this case is really the full representation of materiality. He is the representation of earth in the most Platonic meaning of the nigredo of alchemy. Past Lucifer, Dante starts his opposite process, so his anabasis, his ascension, that would take him right to the opposite side of Earth. So this is very interesting knowledge that Dante already had in the 1300, because he already imagined the structure of his comedy, having hell or Inferno, the gate of Inferno, were placed right below the city of Jerusalem. So he's traveling downward through hell until the center of earth. When he reaches the center of earth where Lucifer is, and therefore earth revolves around him, from that point onward he will start ascending. So he will start ascending, going toward the southern hemisphere. So Mount Purgatory is basically located in the opposite side of Jerusalem. And in fact, he describes pretty well this view, because he says, "E vidi 4 stelle, non viste mai fuor, che la prima gente. Gode appare il ciel di lor fiammelle, o settentrional vedovo sito, poiché privato s'è di mirar quelle." So he's not only knows that on the other side of Earth, basically we are in the southern hemisphere, but he also gives a pretty much detailed description of the southern hemisphere sky, with the 4 stars representing the Southern Cross. And here he finds himself at the feet of the Mount of Purgatory. where he meets the gatekeeper of Purgatory, and this is another fascinating choice that Dante plays, because he chose Marcus Porcius Cato Uticensis, also known as Cato the Younger, as the doorkeeper. And Cato the Younger was a politician, was a writer, was a magistrate during the Roman time, but most of all, again, here we find a pagan, first of all, and we also find one that committed one of the very unforgivable sin under the Catholic Church, which is he committed suicide. He killed himself actually during the reign of Caesar. When Caesar went to power, he killed himself because he saw that transition as the end of the republican values of Rome. At this stage, Dante will have to wash himself, which is another very clear initiatory step, the washing, the ablution, and an angel will draw 7 P's on his forehead. The 7 P's representing P for peccato, which is the Italian word for sin. So the 7 P's will be representing the 7 mortal sins. And these 7 P's, one by one, will be deleted while he completed the circles going up the Purgatory, the Mount of Purgatory. So this is the albedo phase of alchemy, is the phase of purification, and is corresponding exactly to what is written in the Corpus Hermeticum, in the Poemander, at the 25th verse. There is exactly the same process where the soul gets freed of disease, the disease of desire, lies, deceit, going through each planetary sphere while ascending toward the nose. Of course, here we are making the journey as short as possible, just going straight to the quote-unquote interesting esoteric part of the poem. And I'm also skipping a lot of them. I'm just trying to go through the most important one. So we finally, after all these 7 P's have been deleted, he went all the way through up the Garden of Heaven. So the top of the Mount Purgatory is Beatrice. Finally, Beatrice will escort him and guide him through the spheres, the highest spheres of the paradise. So now Dante is moving to a spiritual realm, which is completely opposed to the material realm that we saw it in Inferno. So here we are starting the rubedo phase of alchemy. So Beatrice guides Dante through the celestial bodies, where this time he's actually acquiring virtues at every sphere, while in the Purgatory was losing one of the P, or the sin, at every sphere. Here in the in heaven, in Paradiso, he's actually acquiring a virtue at every sphere. Finally, Beatrice will take him until the last circle, and she hands him over to Bernard of Clairvaux, also known as Saint Bernard. Saint Bernard will be the one that actually will take Dante to the final, the empyrean, the essence of God, to actually have the experience of the vision of God. The choice of Bernard of Clairvaux is obviously very connected to the Templar origin and the Templar background of Dante. As we know, Saint Bernard is known that he not only has shaped the order of the Knights Templar, he gave the rule to the order, and he also became the patron saint of the Knights Templar order. But moreover, it seems he was also related to Hugh de Payenne, actually the first Grand Master of the Knight Templars. And in these, through the help of Bernard, Dante finally is able to experience the mystic vision. This mystic vision, which is like an epopteic experience, is like the pure gnosis, is described as being a dreamy state, exactly the same dreamy state that also is described by Hermes Trismegistus in the Poemander, when he sees the nose. And by the words of Dante, what he sees is: nel suo profondo vidi che s'interna, legata con amore in un volume, ciò che per il mondo si squanterna. This is a verse from Paradise 33, from 85 to 87. And what he's telling us, what he's seeing, is the whole creation is inside the wholeness of God. The creation is basically like an emanation. Here you have the concept of emanation taken from the Neoplatonic or Kabbalistic view of emanation. And love is actually what ties things together. It is love, the link to unity. And this is the most, I think, the most important point of the whole poem. Because the love that we are talking about here, the love that Dante is talking about here, is the love that Plato leaves to Diotima to explain to Socrates in his Symposium, is that highest love of the heroic enthusiast, the eroici furori described by Giordano Bruno. And this love is the eros, is the highest eros, the same eros that we find in the Orphic cosmogony as the driving force behind the generation of life in the cosmos, and is the love, the force that Empedocles, in the theory of Empedocles, that brings together the four elements. So I think love is definitely one of the key points that allows Dante, allows the initiation of Dante and allows him to have the vision of God. In Dante's verses, sì come ruota che ugualmente è mossa l'amor che muove il sole e le altre stelle. And these are his closing verses. Again, one more point that I would like to emphasize, beside the importance of eros, of love as a force of the universe, as a force for actually the to comprehend the essence of God, is also important. I would like to emphasize again that this experience is the experience of Dante is made possible by the three holy ladies, the Virgin Mary, Saint Lucy, and Beatrice. And as we discussed already that Saint Lucy being the lux, the light, Beatrice being the Hagia Sophia, the holy wisdom, we're left to explain the Virgin Mary. And the Virgin Mary, I think, in this interpretation is one of the most beautiful interpretations that we can give, because in this sense the Virgin Mary is really presented as being the feminine side of God. So a God that is both male and female. Actually, the Virgin Mary is the female part of God. And I think this is pretty much all. I think there will be more researches, and I think I leave it up to you to dig eventually if you're interested to know more about Dante Alighieri and his work. I think for this brief discussion, I think we went through the most fundamental, most important, interesting points related to his esoteric and initiatory experience. Thanks again for being with me today, and I'll see you soon. Cheers, bye-bye.